Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia Chapter 396. I'm going to talk about it. It's like a whole week since the chapter came out. I apologize. It's been a really rough week for me. I'm very exhausted. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I tried recording this the first time. The video did not take. It was 40 minutes long. I don't know if I can go for 40 minutes again. But whatever. Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. The good thing is I took so long that we do have some spoilers that we can talk about at the end of the video, so that'll be alright. Overall though, when it comes to chapter 396, I gotta tell you, I really like it. I think in this chapter you see Horikoshi's strength and you see his weakness, and when I say weakness, not really a weakness, it's more like a challenge that you like have to take on when you're it comes with the territory of working in Shonen Jump, where you're like it's probably ill every other day. You're like stressed out to like max belief. Like who knows how stressed you are. It's really a skill set. Like if you developed this skill set to be able to do one part of Shonen Jump very correctly, I feel like everything else would just kind of go down. Just because like there is no perfect Shonen Jump writer. There's like the Shonen Jump authors, and then there's someone that thrives in the Shonen Jump environment, and I think those two things, you know, it takes a different mindset, is what I believe. Anyway, hey, so overall with the chapter, I'm just gonna say some really quick jokey things, and then we'll go into the serious stuff. Don't take the jokey things seriously. First off, I want to say All Might should have equipped himself with some guns. Should have had some machine guns. He has the kitchen sink. He has AI. He has plates that float around him. Bro should have just like equipped some guns. Might as well just put him in there. Say that Bakugo inspired you and use explosions to project some projectiles. Now I also have to say that maybe he didn't need guns after all, because when you see what he does in the chapter, he does send wires into All For One, and it looks like those wires penetrate All For One. They have incredible piercing power. From what it looks like in the images, such that it's like, okay, well, projectiles are going into All For One, and All For One's not making any effort to dodge. So would a gun actually have worked? Yeah, obviously. I mean, like if he brought some hollow point bullets, which I know are a war crime, still, this is the apocalypse, and America would have been happy to do it, given that they already sent missiles at this guy, or like a better version of this guy. Yeah, you know, I feel like going into this, All Might, if he loses, I think he deserves it. And you know, when I say he deserves it, I mean it in the sense like if you were doing a debate and you went unprepared, you deserve to lose. But I wouldn't want you to lose. Maybe you're my friend. I wouldn't want you to lose. Like All Might, I don't want him to lose, but didn't really like the way this suit is. He could have put more stuff into it. That is in my humble opinion. It's just an issue of whether or not the stuff he put in would have worked. But yeah, that's just facetious. On a more serious note, I forgot about this character, but Stain is probably here. Stain's probably going to show up to do something. And you know what's really interesting with Stain is that this chapter and the one after it, it's so interesting that the Hero Academia Society has such a fixation on downplaying support items. And it's like you can get it to some degree, but at the same time, like a gun or a sword will eviscerate the vast majority of pro heroes. Like Stain can throw knives at you, and he's not using his quirk to do that. He gets it really close to Shoto's head, and he doesn't like actually hit Shoto because he doesn't want to. Like Stain is hyper skilled, and that's entirely without using his quirk. His quirk just makes people easier targets, but he's still very formidable when that quirk's not working. Anyway, my point here is like Stain probably is here because he had super hearing when he was like listening in on Ida and Shoto. So he probably knows what All Might's doing. All Might's about to be the greatest hero of all time. Stain probably went over here, and he's probably going to make an appearance. The fact that Stain's going to make an appearance and it's not popping up in the spoilers from what I see so far, and those are incomplete spoilers, kind of indicates to me we're going to be here for a bit while longer. We're going to have to see Stain's, you know, movement here. Like he's probably going to get his moment here, is what I would bet. Anyway, good stuff. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. Let's get into more comprehensive page-by-page walkthrough now. Man, I'm really bothered that I have to do this again. God. You know, just bad rendering, man. Bad rendering. Anyway, the first page, most valuable thing here is that we're getting the reminder of the Night Eye Prophecy. I really appreciate that. There's something that the author's doing here. Like, if it was me, this line right here, then this much is clear. If your foresight quirk still holds true, you know, this pretty much All Might is saying that All for One is the guy that's in the vision, and the reason that Night Eye didn't recognize it is because All for One was younger, so you couldn't really tell. All right. Honestly, for me, this seems like a red herring. If it was me, what I would do is I would use All Might to trick the readers. And the thing is, All Might actually has a really good track record of tricking readers because most manga readers have a bias to just believe whatever a character says. It causes real problems with people when they cannot fathom that a character is unreliable. And like with All Might's done this before in the sense that he doesn't know better, and so like people just believe him. So this might be a little trick here. I would use All Might to say this, make people think that no, it's actually, make people think that yes, it's All for One, but it actually isn't. You might ask, well, Trip, who is going to be the person that kills All Might then if the prediction still holds true? I say Shigaraki. Now, the thing is, the brilliance about the Shigaraki thing is that there's another logical barrier there, because for Shigaraki to come kill All Might, it means something has to happen to Izuku. And honestly, that when it comes to that, the only thing that like stops me from going 100% into Shigaraki coming here and messing All Might up is Bakugo's presence, or lack of a presence, and eventual return. That's the only thing that really throws me off with the whole situation with All Might here. But you know, the author can come up with tricky things. Like, the reality is the author's really good at messing up the fine details, such that you can't predict the fine details of any situation, but you can like maybe predict the broad strokes. Yeah, I'm just ready for Shigaraki to be the one. Now, I think the author's in a really good position, because honestly, if you play it straight, then great. If All Might's right that All for One is the guy in the prediction, great. Like, at this point, I think, well, for me personally, I'm going to enjoy it, because I'm at a point where I think there's actually many routes here. I'm betting on the Shigaraki route, but I'm ready to be surprised. Anyway, this thing, using a character to like make the readers believe something, it's a pretty good tactic. I recommend using it if you ever want to create surprise. Another thing that like really creates surprise is if you make the character seem really smart, like if they are able to, you know, think a few steps ahead in the future, and then you're able to like play around with that. Like, people usually react really well to that, and it limits how much people are gonna critically think about something if you have a character that's agreeing with the initial biases they already have. All right, team. The big thing here is that we find out ever since we last saw All Might facing off against All for One, it's been 20 minutes. So everything, like that whole Toga sequence after that point, 20 minutes. So pretty funny that those twices only run amok for about 20 minutes after seeing All Might here facing down against All for One. It just gives a good time, and like what's crazy to think is that pretty much this fight might already be sorted out by the time we see Toga offering her blood to Ochako. That's actually probably like the coolest thing here. Anyway, for page 2 and 3, in terms of what's most valuable, it's a transformation sequence. Doesn't really matter to me other than the bottom of page 3, which is the whole thing about showing the smile. Now, you understand what's going on with All Might shows the smile. He's showing the smile because, you know, he's got a smile, and also that smile pisses All for One off like to a crazy amount. Page 4 and 5, I'm not going to bother showing that page. We all saw the Iron All Might suit. It looks really cool. Or sorry, Armored All Might. It looks really cool. We get a chapter title, Battle Without a Quirk. And we have All Might streaming with his car, because of course his car can do anything. You can see, actually, let me go to that page. Okay, so what I'm showing here is that you can see that there's like the floating bits, right, that follow All Might around. Like, honestly, the level of technology here is crazy. Do you need a quirk like manuals or rock locks when you have like gun bits pretty much flying around the whole place, man? Like GN Fangs just like blasting everything apart, man. Like, geez, in any other context, this is overkill. But whatever. Moving on though, the technology is neat. All right, so this is one of my favorite pages. Page 6 and 7 honestly do a lot for just the story. They do a lot for just Tsukachi. I actually probably technically the best pages here. Anyway, the one I want to cover first is La Brava. So 100%, this reference only happens because Bleach has an anime running right now, or like this year. That's the only reason this happens, because Bleach is back in the cultural zeitgeist. I love it. And one thing here is, if you don't watch Bleach, you don't get the joke. So the reason that they say, are you like, what is streaming your Bankai? The reasons they say that is because of a peculiarity with Bleach and its anime. Because in the anime, there is a very specific way of pronouncing Bankai. It usually goes bong kai, right? You have that little bit of an enunciation there. The characters are like really slow that down because like the bonkai is like a big moment, right? So when you see this, that's why you have the dot dot dot. It's because she's pronouncing it with the same enunciation live stream, right? So I love that. I love that Horikoshi has that in there. The fact I'm pretty sure this is like the anime's enunciation of the bonkais. That's why Horikoshi did it like that. That's why I'm pretty sure it's the anime influencing. I'm just so happy to see it there, man. It's really neat. My Hero Academia fans might not be fans of Bleach. I just want to make sure you understand where this is coming from. You know, Bong Kai, awesome. It's a good time, man. It's a really good time. Okay, so going into page 6. Overall, I gotta say first is that the spoilers were very loose with their wording, and the fan scans sort of as well. I do appreciate how much tighter the wording is in the official translations because it should be tighter. But anyway, this part here, I want to say, refer to a commenter, White Despair, because White Despair had asked me if I still thought Plan B was All Might being the distraction. And after thinking about it, I think I must have had that idea at some point. It seems like it agrees with what I think in my head. So I just don't remember. Like, my memories are so short. I'm just so exhausted. I haven't had time to reread the series either. But whatever. Plan B. After looking at this page, I have to really wonder, what was Plan B? Because White Despair, the commenter, would say, well, this can't be Plan B because Tsukachi looks surprised. So, like, All Might going out there was never Plan B. I guess so. And then that just kind of opens up, what is Plan B? And now at this point, like, I don't remember if Plan B actually has ever been officially confirmed or we saw it earlier. I don't know anymore. I'm not too sure. If we recall correctly, though, Plan B was something that would happen if All for One and Shigaraki couldn't be kept separated, right? They also had Dobby in that equation, if I recall correctly. But Dobby showed up, and no one talked about Plan B, not really. But it was All for One and Shigaraki that were still being kept apart. So what I'm thinking now is that maybe Plan B was the reformed villains coming in and Higantomakia. Maybe Plan B was using villain resources to try and alleviate the situation. Maybe that was Plan B, or maybe we haven't seen it yet, but I don't know what Plan B could be beyond this point anymore. So good on the author if he still has that card. And apologies if Plan B's already been revealed and I'm just forgetting it. Apologies. Anyway, we go into this line, all the tools and the gadgets in the world won't matter. A quirkless man could never hope to take on All for One. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. That's factually true. I would also say that most heroes could never hope to take on All for One. That said, All Might was packing a lot of gear. And we know that technically, Tsukachi was kind of being shown to be wrong because you have Labrava later saying, well, like, he's doing pretty well. But, like, All Might probably isn't going to be able to hold out that momentum because he already lost 66% of his shields. So this page is actually really, really cool because it's just nice how aware of the situation Tsukachi is. Like, saying that, yo, you're broadcasting the death of the former hero. And the real part that really elevates the lines is stealing a few minutes of All for One's time to make sure the fight goes uninterrupted for his pupil. Yeah, no, man. Being just so aware of this is just all to steal a few minutes, it's awesome. It's awesome when you have a character that's accurately able to relay the situation to readers. Like, just so good. Now, we have more good dialogue on this page. So we have this, and this sequence is essentially the author telling you, guys, this is why this is about to happen. So you have All for One speaking, All Might's the #1 roadblock in my life, thereby establishing history. A toy worth mangling than any other. The choice of words here, toy brings down All Might. Mangling just shows the glee that he would get out of beating up All Might. A lot of grudge here. Delaying my advance, a transparent ploy. That's just to say that he knows what All Might's doing and how it will play out. So all of that is just a setup. Like, this man, this is pretty much his logic. But, in the face of that logic is All Might's smile. And what you pretty much end up seeing is that he has all the logic in the world. He sees the smile. You have the twinge effect. And this is just pretty much saying, like, yeah, All for One, he has a logical brain, but he can't handle his anger. He's like, his veins are pulsing. He's getting pissed off of the smile. And the man gets so pissed off that blood starts bursting from his veins. So, Yes, this is irrational hatred that's on full display here. And you understand what's going on. It's one, teenage hormones. Like, it's been like what, maybe 100 years since All for One's felt the joys of hormones. Two, Shigaraki's hate is getting involved there. So you have a situation where this man has all the logic in the world, but he can't do anything about his emotions anymore. That's pretty much the narrative that Horikoshi is transmitting, and the blood is there just to say, like, guys, this guy is impossibly angry. All right, like, just this is why he's about to do something. Like, he's gonna play into All Might's ploy. It's because of that, right? This is just there. It's a justification technique for like annoying readers that say like, oh, but why is All for One being so stupid? A lot of times, like, readers forget that emotions are really messy. And they always expect hyper competence from people at all times, and it's like that's not how shit works. Mind you, it's annoying when emotions get the better of a really good villain, but in this case, like, Horikoshi is doing so much work to try and justify this. Although I do find that it's usually teenagers and kids that downplay the presence of emotions and hormones. And like that's kind of an age thing too. Like, when you get older and you look back, sometimes you're able to see like, yeah, man, I don't feel emotions as badly as I do when I was a teenager. Just because, like, when you're a teenager, like, I think your frontal cortex is like way more active, your emotional centers are way more active, so you're feeling, when someone says like it feels like their heart is being torn apart, it's a lot different than for a regular person later on. I say regular person because like things like depression and like hormonal imbalances causes changes, later on if you're older. But yeah, no. People are always so quick to try and remove humanity from characters, and they want hyper competence, and it's like, not really, man. Like, if you just have to take a second and just read about the world around you, and you see that people are not hyper competent, and then that always opens up a discussion of like, well, should stories be hyper competent? It's like, no. We go into the bottom. All I want to say here is we have red here, and like, given it as shields, this must be a reference to Kirishima. I feel like that's a safe thing to say here. Alright, so I just skipped ahead past the giant laser. We have everyone surprised that he took the laser and lived, and we see the damage depiction of how the laser destroys everything. Honestly, like, you gotta really think about it. How many people in the Hero Academia world, aside from All for One and Shigaraki, who are, like, well, in Shigaraki's case, he's a melding of science and biology. Like, how many people can actually take that attack from All for One? The fact that All Might can do it, bro, All Might could take probably the majority of attacks from most other heroes that are like below top 20, unless they have instant kills like Shigaraki. Anyway, we have Hercules' shield depleted by 66%, so he can pretty much take, he has 1/3 of his power left. We have this line. Now, this is probably the most critical one. A mad charge, no dodging, his classic style. We also see that his arm is destroyed. That's because he used so much power that his arm blew up. It's pretty much the read on that one. Now, we go over here. And All for One is angrier than before. He's saying that his classic style only works because he held One for All. We then see Black Whip doing its thing. Now, what I think is really funny is you got to remember Black Whip is super similar to Sero's attack. So to some degree, this could have just been Sero's attack. It didn't have to be Black Whip, but whatever. Get some Izuku representation in your arsenal. Now, there's a lot of really interesting things going on here, and I wasn't really sure what's going on, and I'm not sure still. So check this thing out right here. What is going on here with this little thing? What goes on here? These wires go towards him, and then we see many wires coming away from him. So if we look over here now, let me see if I can just get it to you. Right, this one right here. First off, these wires are 100% going into the man's body. And this one, if this wire is coming from outside and going in, that means that All Might's shield bits, and I'm going to call them shield bits. If you know Gundam, you know what I'm talking about. All Might's shield bits fired, and that means that there's more, more help in this situation. If this isn't a shield bit firing, that means that that wire went in there, messed up his insides, and went out. Either way, you have incredible capability here. I just don't know what to make of it. If you look over here, this suggests that the wires are moving away from All for One because they're locking into the city around him. It's just, if it's moving away from All for One, given that we're seeing this thing go into his body, that means these things are popping out of the body. Either way, this is a brutal attack, which is pretty much like the equivalent of getting a bullet shoved in you. Now, I really hope that the anime makes this a bit more clear, because I want to understand what exactly is happening here. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think things are entering his body and bursting out in different directions, or do you think he has shield bits firing more wires into his body? Let me know what you think down below. Either way, it's really massive attack. We have Charge Bolt, which is pretty much electrified. Now you see, like, when we're talking about war crimes, I feel like live electrocution of an enemy like this must be a war crime. It must be. But honestly, guys, if we were in apocalypse, or we had like an alien overlord about to come down and like about to maim the planet, I legitimately hope that people wouldn't shy away from war crimes. Like, come on, existential crisis, guys. Okay, we have this sequence. We see more of All For One's damage. We have a big thing where he's saying the electric current meddles with my regeneration. That makes sense, right? You're being electrocuted. Regen is trying to fix the damage that the electrocution is doing. So you have like what, 20 points of damage per second, and Regen's trying to fix the 20 damage. It's like Regen might be healing you 15 points per second or something. Like, actually no, let's say 21 points per second. So like, you know, eventually the Regen will win out, but the electrocution is still there. Either way, that makes sense. It makes sense why the Regen is being messed with. Okay, so this is actually the most the line we're going to talk the most about, and hopefully I won't take too long on it. If you recall on the spoilers, and I'm remembering this because Sarge came up on commenter Sarge talked to me about, like, because I made a comment about I thought this sequence was stupid, and say, like, you know, there's a point to it, and obviously yes, there's always a point to it. It's unfortunate that, you know, it's unfortunate that I don't have the time to always flesh out all my thoughts, but we're gonna do it here because Sarge brought it up. So there's a lot of weird things about this line. All right. So first, let's understand, why did Horikoshi write this line, right? He wrote this line to justify the absolute beatdown that All For One is about to receive. When you look at page 14 and 15, the way All For One's getting wrecked, this whole page 12 and 13 is there to justify why it's happening to the readers. But here's where Horikoshi's weaknesses pop up. The problem here is that this sequence makes the most sense in the story that the readers have seen. This sequence does not make sense in the story that All Might has lived. In other words, this is one where the narrative takes precedence over the logic of the universe. And it's really tricky what's going on here. So to explain to you the weird thing here about this sequence of lines, let's get into it. So we have to break down like why All Might's creating this construction. So I'm going to read it again. I'm going to switch out the critical lines so that you see the reality of the situation and not the illusion. Ever since your final battle against my master, you made a habit of kicking fights off with haphazard ranged attacks. You love wearing folks down before landing a critical weakening move. That's legal. That's a legal phrase, because stealing their quirks, what happens when you steal a person's quirk? They get severely weakened, right? A critical weakening move. The reason that we're making it general is because what's going on here is that the armor itself, you can just say it's a quirk. That's all. You can say it's a quirk. The armor can still be destroyed. The armor can still be weakened. It is essentially a quirk for the purposes of this thing, or a superpowered ability. You can call that a superpowered ability pretty much. With the way that the whole world is talking down support items, yeah, you can definitely just say it's a superpowered ability that can be destroyed even quicker than a quirk can. Okay, you love wearing folks down before landing a critical weakening move, but that approach is meant for fighting those with quirks that can be stolen. The reason that we say that can be stolen, and the reason that it's legal to make that substitution in there, is because all I've done in that one is add a layer of redundancy. The line before stealing their quirks is what allows us to say that quirks inherently have a property that says that they can be stolen. That's why we say it's meant for fighting those with quirks that can be stolen. The reason that we say all of this, especially for that final line, is because this approach that All Might is using is the exact same thing he probably did against All For One when he fought him the first time. That's why it's weird. Imagine the final, or like All Might and All For One's battle that ultimately ended All For One's reign of terror. Imagine that setting. Now imagine that All Might says, as he's rushing All For One, ever since your final battle against my master, you've made a habit of kicking fights off with haphazard range attacks. You love wearing folks down before stealing their quirks, but that approach is meant for fighting those with quirks that can be stolen. Don't you think he would say that? ultimately what I'm saying here is that he's just repeating the exact same thing he did against All For One before. And the brilliance of the chapter is actually that All For One, when I say All Might is doing the exact same thing, All For One agrees. When All For One says a mad charge, no dodging, his classic style, and it only works because you held one for all. When All For One says a mad charge, no dodging, his classic style, that's the proof right there. All Might has not changed in any which way whatsoever. He is doing the exact same things that he's always done. And that is what ultimately just breaks apart this whole little situation here. What's going to be really interesting moving forward is if All For One talks more about this fact, but there's nothing new or novel here. If anything, the only thing that's changed is the power set. All Might's still going to try to tank things as if he has one for all, and All For One is still going to be in this position where he's going to get beat up. And the reason that All For One is getting beat up, and the reason that All Might brings this up in the first place, is that probably people are cautious against All For One, so they don't want to get within range of him. So All For One in turn isn't used to dealing with people in range. But when you consider that All Might has never feared All For One taking one for all, you realize that All For One is just going through the motions of what he's done before. And that's really what makes the whole situation just a little bit funnier. Now, Commenter by Despair also made a comment that, well, if All Might has this amazing gear, and it is amazing, why didn't he just go help Endeavor and Hawks? And just, you know, actually put an end to All For One. Now, to Horikoshi's credit, and to like defend him there a little bit, I think what likely happened is that All Might was probably hoping that All For One be taken out, and then All Might probably wanted to help Izuku against Shigaraki. So when you look at it from that perspective, it actually makes sense that All Might would want to conserve this very limited power-up for the person that he might want to help more, Izuku. That's why... that's the only thing that really allows this situation to make sense. Why would All Might hold back from going to Endeavor and Hawks? It's because, like, he was afraid that All For One would deplete the suit enough that he wouldn't be able to help Izuku anymore. But at the end of the day, he's still helping Izuku. Like, he ultimately went out there. You know, that's... the thing is, like, All Might's so biased for Izuku that kind of approach actually makes sense with him. Anyway, we go down into the sequence where La Brava's here. She's... giving us a little bit of a ray of hope here. We find out that he put in the request for the design. We get Melissa's first actual appearance in Hero Academia officially. And then we just go into full-on the shoot style situation where All For One is getting the biggest beating of his life. Actually, no, second biggest beating. The first beating, like, robbed him of his head when All Might beat him up pretty badly. But yeah, no, like, this should just be a giant flashback to him. The thing is, like, Horikoshi is so good at pointing out character flaws. And, like, in this chapter, you see the character flaws right there. All For One should be making a line about, yo, this is the same thing that happened to me the first time. And when that line comes out, it'll just be further, you know, it'll just be a further admittance of All Might doing the same things he's always done. And the thing is, like, All Might doing the same things he's always done, that's who he is. We all know this. He doesn't change, not really. He only changes when things go really bad. We all know this guy. This guy has terrible communication. Bakugo called him out on always being a workaholic and being, like, toxic for Izuku because they're both workaholics, right? Like, All Might right now is set up for All For One to really go in there and just, like, give him a nice tongue lashing about his faults. And that'll be really exciting to see. Now, to speak about the spoilers, I was really hoping that we would get more lines for the spoilers that could maybe, like, further that idea of, like, All Might just retreading the same steps he's done before, but we don't. In what seems to be coming, it looks like the spoilers just continue taunting. Now, if you don't want to listen to the spoilers, cool. Guys, have a great day. I won't spoil it for you. Just get out of the video. I'm going to talk about the spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's get into it. So they're pretty broken up at this point. We're probably getting better spoilers today or tomorrow, but I'll just give them to you right here. The next chapter is Time for a Cleanup. It does have some pictures. If you want to find the spoilers, I just check on Manga Helpers. That's where I like to go. Okay, so we have a line that goes, almost 55 years of life, I end up beating the shit out of a kid. That must be All Might talking and taunting All For One. I'm going to exploit the intense rage you fed off of to get hold of One For All. So that's just like reaffirming something that we saw in this line, that being he's taking advantage of the fact that All For One is like being contaminated by Shigaraki anger and hatred. And he's, you know, taking advantage of that. I don't even need to use my alter against you. I don't know what alter refers to. I'm going to assume that's quirk, and it didn't get translated correctly. The more I hit you, the more you'll forget the rest. I'm thinking that must be All Might talking about some kind of weird rewind effect. Randomly combining your alters, that proves my provocations are working. I think that's what makes me think it's quirk. So All For One is combining quirks randomly, and he's just in a rage, so that they're not very efficient. That makes sense. Then someone says, you think you meet me halfway. You think you're invisible because you cover yourself in a plastic garbage bag. That must be All For One. He says, I'll destroy it. Items cannot be pushed to their limits. Okay, more anti-support items propaganda. Whatever. We have All Might saying, we agree on that, my friend. Personally, I think an item can be pushed to its limits. Like, you know, when you overclock a computer, I think you're pushing it to its limits. Anyway, we agree on that, my friend. Heck, man, if this was in Gundam, you're pushing your Gundam to your limits. All right, like items can't be. It's the, you know, rhetoric changes depending on the series. We have a flashback to All Might and Nana. A really young man, you hope to beat him with that piece of metal, and it's a flashback of All Might holding a pipe, probably going up against villains. If All Might was holding a sharp metal club, it would have been more than enough for the vast majority of people in Hero Academia. Anyway, we have a wonderful All For One line that goes, let's be clear, I didn't fall for your little plan. It's obvious you did. All For One says, it's just that it won't really stop me from cleaning up afterwards. And then All Might says, don't try to save face, it's pitiful. And then that's where the spoilers seem to end. Hopefully that's not the entire chapter, but we'll have to see. Pretty much, it's just the two of them are smack talking. That's pretty much all we see here. They're just going at it. They're just yelling. There's no Stain showing up, so we're probably going to see more of that later. But yeah, it's just back and forth of smack talk. Overall, for this chapter of Hero Academia, man, yeah, I think it's good. I think it's fun. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I'm like, what I'm most excited about is to see if All For One calls out All Might for just doing the same things. But like when you don't even need that, because like when you have the chapter saying All For One making reference to only one for all, lets All Might do what he's about to do. It's like, yeah, no, you're in the exact same situation. All Might doesn't fear his quirk being stolen. That's going to give him the same advantage it gave him against All For One the first time. All Might's just retreading the same lessons. Then Stain, yeah, I'm just really excited for Stain. Guys, let me know what you thought down below. And for the live stream crew, I'm not sure if I'll be able to live stream today again, just because it's just been really terrible work weeks for me. But I'll let everyone know in the Discord if I get confirmation. Anyway, guys, till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. Stay safe.